Good morning, Cedar Ridge. My name is Kristen Worry, and today we'll be discussing the meaning of life because obviously I am highly qualified to teach you about this topic. Today we are going to be looking at the movie Soul from Disney Pixar, and we are talking about that, the meaning of life. So what is living? Merriam-Webster defines living as having life, exhibiting the life or motion of nature. I'm not so sure about the rest of you, but that doesn't quite do it for me. So let's jump into our first clip and meet the main character, Joe. So in this first scene, we see Joe struggling as a middle school band teacher, as well as his talent and passion for jazz music. Joe is dissatisfied with his life and he longs to be a professional musician. When a former student reaches out and offers Joe the opportunity of a lifetime, the chance to play jazz with the legend Dorothea Williams, he is elated. And I think we can all relate to Joe. What he wants is something that is culturally accepted as being a worthy pursuit. Our culture tends to assign value based on achievement, and most of us have probably thought at one point or another, if I could just accomplish this one thing, then I will be happy. And that's how Joe feels in this scene. I'll let you know, he goes, he nails the audition, and he is set to play the gig of his life. But then something quite frustrating happens. He dies. He falls through a manhole on his way home from the audition. But Joe is still clinging to his dream of being a jazz musician when he reaches the great beyond. He is on a conveyor belt heading towards the light, and he starts running away saying, I have a gig tonight. I can't die now. I am not dying today, not when my life just started. And as Joe runs away from the light, he finds himself in the great before, a place where souls exist to get their personalities before heading to Earth as babies. He becomes the mentor to a misfit soul named 22. We're going to use the pronouns they, there, because they haven't been born yet. 22 has been there for hundreds of years because 22 hasn't found their spark or reason to live. Joe, trying to get back to his body, follows 22 to a place between the spiritual and physical worlds called the flow zone. This flow zone is based off of a book, the book Flow, and it was a concept outlined by Mahaley C. and Martin Seligman, the founders of modern positive psychology. So let's take a look at what the flow zone looks like. So here in this scene, Joe and 22 see artists and musicians and workers above them in a state of flow or in the zone. And this teaches us that we can connect with the spiritual world and elevate ourselves in this life. It may look like prayer, it may look like meditation, it may be playing in the epic soccer game of your life, but it's possible. Then we also see some dark, voiceless monsters moping about on the ground, shuffling through the rubble. And these are the lost souls, the anxiety-ridden people, consumed by their goals, fears, or passions. In the movie, we saw the example of a hedge fund manager who is suffering and repeating, take a trade, take a trade, take a trade, take a trade. And this illustrates that when our flow or when our zone becomes our obsession, it turns into a lost soul. It separates you from your true life. So we're going to take a little sidebar because this is not the main point of my lesson, but I definitely want to make a point and talk about these lost souls. I think that many of us at times feel like lost souls. For some of us, this is a new sensation brought on by the stress and isolation over the past year or so, or by a particular trauma. For others, like myself, this is something that we've struggled with for most of our lives. Lost souls in the movie tend to run away from people who are trying to help them, away from relationships, away from the things that are actually good for them. And It's very visible and scary slash comical in the movie, but in real life, it just clicked with me. Why? Like, why do we avoid relationships and help when we need it the most? And so I just wanted to share some of the reasons I do those things, so that when you see someone who may be lost, you might be able to get a little bit of perspective of why they're coming off as rude and flaky and dismissive. But some of the things that I came up with were feelings of unworthiness, not wanting to be seen in that condition, or maybe so consumed with their own sadness that anything else, any other conversation, job, task, just becomes overwhelming and fries the system. The movie does a good job of showing how easy it is to slip and become a lost soul, and how much work is required to be restored to your true life. And as you saw in that scene, that lost soul didn't do it on their own. They were surrounded by people who were there to support and help them. For those of you out there that are struggling, asking for help can be really, really hard. And some of us are tired of praying and complaining and asking for help. But there's this quote that I found online, Dwight L. Moody. I don't even know who he is, but I liked what he said. Some people think God does not like to be troubled with our constant coming and asking. The way to trouble God is to not come at all. And another quote I found that I liked was, be strong enough to stand alone, smart enough to know when you need help, and brave enough to ask for it. Okay, so that was my sidebar. Thank you for listening and indulging me. Back to the movie. So on their journey to try to reunite Joe with his body, there's a mishap, and 22 ends up in Joe's body, while Joe's soul ends up in the body of a therapy cat. And at first you think this hilarious plot twist is just to add humor, but this was meant to share another lesson. As a soul that's never been to Earth before or never been in a body, the experience of living is entirely new to 22. And at first, being stuck in Joe's body is overwhelming. Learning to walk, handling all of the noise of the people and being bumped on the crowded streets of New York. But then Joe brings 22 a piece of pizza because he realized that 22 was probably upset because they were hungry. And so that first bite of pizza is overwhelmingly positive for 22. Now, Joe's whole life has been consumed with jazz. Now he's in the body of a cat, watching himself, his body being driven by 22, with a complete lack of interest in jazz, and how that creates new opportunities for human connection and other things. 22 delights in living life moment to moment and appreciating the things that Joe overlooks as he continues with his tunnel vision focus on being a jazz musician. So one of the scenes that really stood out to me was when Joe, the cat, takes 22 Joe to the barber to get a haircut, and the conversations that happen there. So let's watch that. All right, we are starting to see what Joe truly needs, and it is not the gig of his life. He needs to recognize that attaching his life's purpose to one single accomplishment prevents him from actually living. Although Joe starts to become conscious of this about halfway through the movie, this need was actually present from the start of the film in ways even we may have missed because we were swept up in Joe's culturally encouraged pursuit of becoming a jazz musician. In those same first scenes that we saw, as Joe struggles teaching, we also see him experiencing joy in watching one of his students fall in love with music. In the second scene, his mother points out all the things he doesn't seem to appreciate about teaching. And if we revisit Joe's lines as he was faced with the great beyond, I'm not dying today, not when my life just started, we see that Joe was subconsciously aware of what he needed. Deep down, he knew that he was not living his real life, but instead waiting for some magical future that will mark when his life really starts. So Joe fully realizes what he needs once he receives what he wants. What a life. You get what you want and what you need in the same movie. Joe's finally back in his body. He manages to make it to his gig with Dorothea Williams. It is still clear he's holding on to this need, this want, and he hasn't fully embraced his need to live each moment. He plays the show and he absolutely nails it, receiving a standing ovation. Joe finally has gotten everything he has ever wanted. So he's really confused when he finds himself feeling lost. And he has a conversation with the one and only Dorothea Williams, and the next clip is that conversation. After getting exactly what he wants and speaking to Dorothea, Joe now understands attaching your purpose in life to a goal will not bring you permanent happiness, even if you achieve it. And in the meantime, you'll miss out on all the life happening around you. Armed with this knowledge, Joe returns home to remember the joy that 22 found in all the little things in life, and finally gets what he needs. After this, Joe uses his music to transport himself back into the zone and finds that 22 has become a lost soul. Joe chases down 22 and helps them break free. Joe encourages 22 to travel to the portal to Earth and holds their hand on the journey for as long as he is able. I hope everyone is blessed to have someone to hold their hand, like Joe did for 22. So now we're going to read a passage from the beginning of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and he opens with the Beatitudes.
Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 through 12. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you."
In this passage, Jesus calls us to join a radical kingdom. He gives us a radical vision to match that kingdom of heaven infiltrating our present. The kingdom of God is at hand. It is here. It is now. The heart of Jesus' message is that we are created to live in a spirit of blessings. This is our primary vocation in our holiness. The word beatitude literally means happiness or blessing. God has placed a desire for happiness in every heart. In these beatitudes, Jesus wants to help us make important decisions in life and use all the good available to us. How can we find happiness, though, in poverty and hunger and sorrow and persecution? And just as Joe saw in the movie, Jesus implies through relationships, through our relationship with God, our family, our friends, we can experience joy even in the midst of persecution and distress. So our three main takeaway lessons from today are: message 1 is from our buddy Joe. You and your life are more than your spark or purpose. If we decide that our lives don't really begin and won't really have a purpose until we achieve a singular goal, then we may miss out on all the life happening around us in this very moment. By all means, search for your spark, find your passion, but don't make your whole life revolve around finding that one passion. Don't ignore all the gifts and joys that are already in your life. Don't think that your life will instantly change once you make your passion into your work. Takeaway message is from 22. I really wanted to spend more time on 22's point of view of things, but then I'd keep you here all day, and I know how that goes. Message from 22, life is worth living. All those little moments that we usually take for granted, that's living. Find joy in your current job, current home, in all the little things. View them as the gifts that they are. Use the little moments to change the world. A kind word, smiling to a stranger on the street, seeing a pretty flower, whatever it is that brings you joy, look for those moments. And if we start looking for them, we're going to find them. And then the takeaway message number 3 is do not let your passions, your purpose become your obsession. Find a way to stay grounded in your true life. Use prayer, meditation, or relationships to stay connected with the blessings in the life that we've been given. If you feel as though you are lost, reach out to a friend, reach out to one of our amazing pastors or a counselor if you know one. And if you don't know one, you can be connected to one. Matthew has helped me find counselors over the years, and it has helped a lot. You're not expected to snap out of this alone. It takes a village. You need to be surrounded by people who love you and support you and will hold your hand. Now, if you're on the other side of this and you are not a lost soul, but you have a friend who seems lost, don't give up on them. It is hard to come out of that fog. Help them see that they're valuable and loved just the way they are, and they may not believe you. You may have to shout it and repeat it more than the voices in their head telling them otherwise. Hold their hand for as long as you are able. So those are our 3 takeaway messages. At the end of the movie, Joe gets a chance to return to his body and continue his life because he really impressed, I forget the name of the characters, the people in charge of the beyond. And I'm going to leave you with the same question that they asked Joe once he realized he got this opportunity. So what do you think you're going to do? How will you spend your life?